To go. Good evening and welcome to the Pennsylvania Attorney General Candidate Forum. Tonight's event is hosted by the Committee of 70, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, the Forum of Executive Women, the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and the Philadelphia Bar Association. My name is Lauren Christella, and I'm the President and CEO of the Committee of 70, a nonpartisan nonprofit that has advanced government ethics and election integrity for over a century. 70 advocates for more free, fair, safe, and secure elections and works to ensure that every eligible voter votes, is informed when they vote, and votes with confidence. In that spirit, we put together this bipartisan event to inform and engage voters about the crucial role of the Pennsylvania Attorney General. The Attorney General is the state's top law enforcement official. They represent our state government in legal matters that impact the lives of Pennsylvanians. They enforce state laws, investigate corruption, and uphold the Pennsylvania and U.S. constitutions. The office's work is supported by hundreds of prosecutors, attorneys, investigators, and support staff. We are fortunate to have Diana Cortez as our moderator this evening. Diana is currently a partner at Morgan Lewis. And before joining this prestigious law firm, Diana served as Philadelphia's city solicitor and was the first Latina to serve in this role. She was responsible for overseeing legal matters for the mayor, city council, and various city departments. And during the pandemic, she provided critical legal counsel and was among the core group of leaders managing the city's response, including the vaccine rollout and public safety measures. She's a member of Philadelphia's Hispanic Bar Association and the Philadelphia Diversity Law Group. Diana's extensive experience in crisis and complex litigation, including class action lawsuits, makes her an invaluable guide for tonight's discussion. So please join me in giving her a warm welcome. Thank you so much, Diana. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and good evening and buenas noches, and welcome to tonight's candidate forum for our Commonwealth's Attorney General. As Lauren stated, I'm your moderator, Diana Cortez. My pronouns are she, her, and ella for the Spanish speakers. And tonight we have the privilege of hearing from 6 distinguished candidates who aspire to be our Commonwealth's top prosecutor. Now, before we move into tonight's discussion, let's quickly review the rules. As we know, our Attorney General has to follow and enforce rules. So let's see how well our candidates tonight can follow tonight's rules for the discussion. So for the first round, each candidate will have 90 seconds to first give us an introductory statement and then answer a few open-ended questions. If anyone is mentioned specifically by an opponent, that person will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. Further, at my discretion, if a particular answer needs some clarification, I may request such clarification. And to help you all and all of our listeners keep track of time, there will be a 90-second timer, 1 minute and 30 seconds on the screen. And there will also be, I think, a slight buzzing sound once the time is up. So we are monitoring time closely and may mute participants who exceed our grace period of 5 to 10 seconds. Any questions? I don't see any. It seems clear. And now, without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start in reverse alphabetical order with the introductory statements. So we're going to start with Mr. Craig Williams. If you can please give us a brief introduction of yourself, including why you're running and what your top priorities would be if you were elected our Commonwealth's next Attorney General.
Diana, thank you very much. My name is Craig Williams. I am in this forum the lone Republican, although there are 2 of us in the primary, and I'll talk about that in just a second. I am a retired Marine Corps colonel, nearly 30 years in the Marine Corps, about 16 years of that on active duty. I flew in the F-18 as a weapons systems operator and was decorated for valor in combat, 56 combat missions flown in Desert Storm. Went to law school in the Marine Corps, eventually the chief prosecutor of the largest base in the Marine Corps. Later in my career as a colonel, I was the head prosecutor of the entire Marine Corps Reserve. In the middle of my reserve time, I mobilized back to active duty to become deputy legal counsel to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I was also a federal prosecutor in the Department of Justice in Denver and in Philadelphia, where I did predominantly organized crime, gun violence, and immigration crime. My reason for running is that I'm absolutely tired of the violence in our major cities. And I know many of my colleagues here are very familiar with what we're dealing with in Philadelphia, and that has been one of the emphasis of mine in the State House where I'm currently elected. My top 3 priorities are violence, particularly gun violence, fraud on seniors, and also addiction. Finally, I'll just say the empty chair here is my opponent, who eschews all of these forums. This is the 3rd time I've had a debate with my friends on the other side of the aisle. He doesn't show up because he's a minnow in a small minnow pond, and this is the big stage.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jack Stolzheimer.
Good evening, and thank you, Diane, and thank you for the Committee of 70 and all the other organizations who have organized this hopefully informative forum tonight. My name is Jack Stolzheimer. I'm the first Democrat elected district attorney in Delaware County since the Civil War. I was reelected last year and now running for Attorney General to frankly do all the work I've been doing in Delaware County for all 67 counties of Pennsylvania. As you mentioned, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania is the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer, responsible for supervising the investigation and prosecution of thousands of criminal cases every year. I think I'm uniquely qualified to be the next Attorney General because I do that work every single day in the Commonwealth's 5th largest county. You can look at my website, jackforag.com, and find out all about the work we've done. But I've been able to balance criminal justice reform. I led the deprivatization of our county prison and also have reduced that population by 40% over the last 4 years. At the same time, I've taken on the gun violence in the city of Chester. And by building a partnership between the community and the police, we've reduced the number of shootings by 72%, the number of gun homicides by 68%. Ladies and gentlemen, as your next Attorney General, I intend to keep doing that work, plus the work I've done in environmental crimes, the work I've done on wage theft, and the work I've done protecting women's rights to reproductive health. I look forward to being the next Attorney General of Pennsylvania. Again, my name is Jack Stolzheimer, and I deeply appreciate your support.
Thank you. Mr. Jared Solomon, you're up.
Thank you, Committee of 70. I'm running for Attorney General because our fundamental foundational rights are on the ballot in 2024. With Trump coming back as the Republican nominee, he's bringing all of his special interests to Pennsylvania, and they're going to be threatening our fundamental freedoms, abortion access, the sacred right to vote. We need someone with the values and the fight to push back against those special interests at every turn. I've shown that fight time and time again. I get that fight from my mom, a special education teacher who raised me above my great-grandparents' butcher shop, single mom. I've demonstrated that fight bringing my neighborhood back in Northeast Philadelphia. I've taken that fight as a securities and antitrust lawyer to make sure to hold the biggest corporate cheats accountable for us here in Pennsylvania. I've been able to stand up in Harrisburg and throughout our city and state to the biggest political power brokers and elites to make sure that they weren't just interested in padding their own pocket. They were interested in taking care of our communities. And I most proudly demonstrated that fight when I've served my country in the Army and now in the National Guard. As these extremists come to Pennsylvania in 2024, and all of those state attorneys generals come to PA who are going to threaten abortion access, we need a fighter, someone with the values and work ethic to push back against those interests at every turn.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Kahn.
Thanks, Diana. Thank you to all of our hosts and to my competitors for spending this time with everyone tonight. I'm really delighted to be here. My name is Joe Kahn, and I want to be our next Attorney General because I'm running to build a better world for my kids. I want them and everyone across Pennsylvania to have an Attorney General who's going to keep them safe, not just from crime, but also corruption and attacks on our rights. And that's the work that I've been doing for the last 24 years, beginning when I came home from law school in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, prosecuting sexual assault, child abuse, domestic violence, taking that fight to the United States Attorney's Office, where for 10 years as a federal prosecutor, I helped reduce not only gun violence, but massive corruption. Political corruption like we saw in the city halls of Allentown and Reading, but also the kind of corporate corruption that inspired me to begin a new career after 16 years as a prosecutor in civil justice, where I started taking on companies like Big Pharma for their role in the opioid epidemic that devastated communities across Pennsylvania. And that's the work that took me up to Bucks County, where I served as a county solicitor doing all kinds of work I'm hoping to talk about tonight. But it's the work I did defending our rights that are really what's most at stake in this election. First, our right to abortion. I was targeted for being the only county solicitor in Pennsylvania to use their office to defend that right. I am the only county solicitor who has enforced our constitutional right to a clean environment. And when our right to vote came under attack in 2020, I not only defended it in Bucks County, I united counties across Pennsylvania to stop Donald Trump, fight him to the U.S. Supreme Court, and win.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eugene DePasquale.
Thank you so much, and thank you to my fellow competitors and the Committee of 70. My name is Eugene DePasquale, and I want to be your attorney. First thing you should know about me is I know struggle. I'm seeking to become the first child of a convicted felon ever elected Attorney General. My dad was wounded in Vietnam, shot twice in the right leg, once in the left. Eventually became addicted to painkillers and started dealing and received a 10.5-year federal prison sentence. I also know what it's like to struggle because my brother Anthony had muscular dystrophy. Because of that, we never had health insurance when we were kids. When he passed away from complications, we had to take out loans to pay for the funeral. My dad had to come to the funeral in shackles. I even know what it's like to struggle. I worked as a janitor in college while playing 2 college sports, had to put myself through night law school. And I'd like to think that tenacity and knowing struggle is why I was able to be an effective leader as Auditor General, taking on tough investigations and winning. It was my investigation that found over 3,000 untested rape kits, bringing justice to victims. It was my investigation that found 58,000 unanswered phone calls to the child abuse hotline. Any single one of those calls could have been life or death for a child. And also leading the school safety task force to make sure our schools were better protected. That's some of the leadership and struggle that I bring to you. And my priorities will be clear. It's to defend our democracy, defend reproductive freedom, protect our environment, and take on these crooks that are trying to scam our seniors every single day. My name's Eugene DePasquale, and I want to be your Attorney General.
Thank you. And Ms. Keir Bradford Gray.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for putting this forum together. I want to apologize now for my voice. I am trying to make sure that I'm very projective as I can be, but I want to be the Attorney General because I want to be the people's lawyer. I know the responsibility and the opportunity of the role, and it is so enormous as it relates to tackling the problems and struggles that people are having, not just in their communities as it relates to crime, but in their households as it relates to security. I understand exactly what families are facing when they're looking at how they're going to make sure that they are protected against those in the boardroom who take money out of their pockets, food off their tables, and roofs from over their heads. But I also understand what violence looks like. Being a mother of 2 children who live in communities where violence strikes, I understand exactly what we need to do with a person that has the ability to look at prevention and to look at opportunities to go after bad actors in a targeted way so that the decisions are fair and final. I understand the problem with the crime epidemic because I've heard it so much. Being the leader of the 4th largest public defender office in the nation allows me a vantage point like no other. I understand what people are facing, and my top priorities will give people greater financial protections, making sure people have access to healthcare, and making sure we target illegal gun distribution where it needs to, because it's an epidemic. There's too much access for people who should not have guns. My name is Keir Bradford Gray. I'm running for Attorney General.
Thank you, and thank you all. A few of you mentioned this topic, so we're going to start right off with public safety and gun violence. So we've all gotten to know you a little bit through your introductory statements, so we're on a first name basis. So Jack, how would you, as Attorney General, address public safety, in particular gun violence, across our beloved Commonwealth?
Great question, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years as District Attorney of Delaware County, which again is why I'm uniquely qualified to be the next Attorney General of Pennsylvania. So what we've done in the city of Chester, which is the place, by the way, where my mother first lived as a free person when she came to this country as a 15-year-old Ukrainian refugee from a Nazi slave labor camp. I've built what's called the Chester Partnership for Safe Neighborhoods. I've brought the community and the police together around a strategy called focused deterrence, We focus on the 1% of people who do 75 to 80% of the shootings. And we give them an opportunity to put the guns down and go a different way. We'll help them if they let us, but we're going to stop them if they make us. And we've done both in the city of Chester to great success. My gun violence program, we've reduced the number of shootings by 72% over the last 4 years in the city of Chester. The number of gun homicides are down by 68%. It's the most successful gun violence reduction program in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania right now. And what I intend to do as Attorney General is spend the next 4 years of my life bringing that same focus and energy to every single county in Pennsylvania. Every county has a gun violence problem, even in rural Pennsylvania, where the problem is generally regards to gun suicides and gun safety. I'm going to bring the holistic approach that I brought to the city of Chester to every single community in Pennsylvania. That's my passion. That's what I spent a good deal of my life doing. I look forward to doing it as the next Attorney General.
Thank you, Jack. Jared, you're up.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you about what I'm doing in Northeast Philadelphia right now. I've taken a very expansive view of what safety and security means in my community. It means enforcement, investment, and protection from special interests. On the enforcement side, I came in to office, I located a new police district in my neighborhood, and then right next to it, located a top-of-the-line mental health provider. Now we have the diversionary programs that folks need. So when police have an encounter with someone presenting with mental health issues or addiction, they can get the diversionary programs. Cops can go on to handle the high ticket issues that are plaguing our communities. Second, on investment, we have this beautiful study in Philadelphia that shows modest investments, cleaning up our streets, increasing lighting, reduces crime by 22%. I've embraced that, took a blighted parcel, turned it into a community park, crime plummeted by 37%. And on protection from special interests, brought money, injected resources into the Gun Violence Task Force, partnership between DA and AG to get ghost guns, illegal guns off of our streets. The way we tackle safety and security is we take a broad view of enforcement, investment, of protection from special interests. I want to take that model to all 67 counties.
All right, thank you, Jared. Joe, same question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a really important topic. And I would address this the same way that I addressed this when I first got to the U.S. Attorney's Office over 17 years ago and was asked to address the escalating rate of gun violence in Southwest Philadelphia when I was coordinating the Violent Crime Impact Team. And what we did was we took a step back from the statistics and started to work with not just a number of folks in different law enforcement agencies, but folks in the community to find out what was going on behind these arrests and behind the shootings. And what we came to understand was that a disproportionate amount of the gun violence that we were seeing was caused by a relatively small group of people. And so we used the awesome power of our office and of federal prosecution and arrests to focus on that small group of people to intervene to save lives. But we didn't just stop there. And it was after the arrests and the indictments that we started to give some of these offenders who were coming into the system a chance to try and make things right and help us go after the folks that were responsible for flooding our streets with guns, shutting down gun stores that were breaking the law, breaking up gun trafficking rings, and importantly, helping us solve homicides that had gone unsolved for years to bring justice for victims in Philadelphia. We did that not by me alone or any one individual doing all the work, but by bringing a bunch of folks together. And then at the end of that, I was there long enough to work with some of these same offenders as they returned to the community. And as they re-entered society as returning citizens, we invested in their success to make sure that our view of public safety wasn't just about prosecuting people when they do wrong, but setting them up to do right.
Right, thank you, Joe. Eugene?
Yes, this issue is personal to me. I've seen firsthand what happens to a victim of gun violence, and that was my dad. And it leads to decades of struggle. And whether that happens on the battlefield or whether that happens on some community in Pennsylvania, we have to make sure that we take gun violence seriously. That means cracking down on the ghost guns. Anyone that harms a human being, punished significantly. That means going after the dealer that sells a gun illegally, getting ghost guns off the street. These are all critical areas that we need to take on. But it's also important to note that 2/3 of all firearm deaths in Pennsylvania are the result of suicide. We clearly need to push harder for red flag laws. And when someone needs the mental health help, we need to make sure they get the help they need, because that is happening every single day. And as Craig and others who have served know, our veterans most especially are impacted by this firearm violence of suicide every single day. And the other area that I think we have to really make sure that we're doing as Attorney General is we are elected officials. We have to use the bully pulpit to talk about areas of the law that need to be enhanced. As Auditor General, I investigated all of our gun laws in Pennsylvania. I saw where the gaps were, where we can improve background checks, where we can improve enforcement of at gun sales that are done illegally, and also making sure, again, that we are getting people the mental health help we need. That's the type of broad-based approach I want to take as your Attorney General.
Thank you, Eugene. Kier?
Thank you, Diana, for the question. This is a very complex issue. And as the leader of the public defender office who represented those who came into the system charged with these offenses, I understand not only how these things occur, but why they occur. And I can use all of that knowledge to target the threats directly and make sure that no one gets caught in the web, that we can do the things that we need to do and have the balance that we need to actually increase public safety. I know for a fact that there are so many people who should not have a gun that can easily access a gun because we're not holding the gun dealers and the gun sellers to the same level of scrutiny that we hold the kid on the street corner making stupid decisions. We need to make sure we enforce the laws in the books. We need to make sure that when gun dealers and sellers who have a license to sell guns do it unscrupulously or do it negligently and recklessly so that they have created a nuisance, they are held accountable for not transferring the sale, for turning a blind eye when they know someone should not have a gun, and for not making sure they do a background check. We need to make sure that we do that with private sales as well in our Commonwealth, because you can get a gun way too easily on Facebook Marketplace. And it's it's unfortunate that we haven't targeted this issue much sooner. I will also make sure that I push back on manufacturers to ensure that their products are not a nuisance and ask them to use the most updated technology, because if not, we will go after them for a public nuisance lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kier. Craig?
Thank you very much. I've been working hard on this since the day I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office and then also in the Pennsylvania House. As both Jack and Joe know, there's a program in the Department of Justice called Project Safe Neighborhoods, or what we call gun prosecutors. And the main tool of Project Safe Neighborhoods is to prosecute prior convicted felons found in possession of guns. As Joe was alluding to, the overwhelming amount of violent crime is committed by a prior convicted felon. So the idea is that you go after these prior convicted felons found with guns and prosecute them federally. And as a consequence of that, the sentences are extraordinarily severe and there's no parole in the federal system. I made use of my knowledge of that program to go to the Pennsylvania budget when I was in the State House starting in 2020, and every year since then to bring $1.5 million the first year and $3 million ever since to fund additional assistant district attorneys to come into PSN to prosecute federally. And Jack and I have been working together on that in Delaware County. And Philadelphia now has that program as well. In addition to that, in the State House, I was able to get passed in 2022 the Gun Violence Task Force out of the House, which would take the DA's office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Attorney General's office working collaboratively to find those prior convicted felons in possession of guns, prosecute them federally, get those very severe sentences with no possibility of parole, and we send a message loud and clear to the streets that violence won't be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving from gun violence to another very important topic that all of you have spoken about is consumer protection. So Kier, we're going to start with you. How do you intend to safeguard consumers from fraud, scams, and deceptive business practices, particularly in areas such as healthcare, education, and finance? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you for that. This is one of the areas of the office that excites me, and it's a large role that the Attorney General plays. We want to make sure that anyone who's doing business in the marketplace here in Pennsylvania are treating people fairly. And I know what that feels like firsthand. I know what it feels like to be denied access to wealth from financial institutions. And we will make sure that people know their rights and their opportunities when it comes to growing economic wealth. We will also make sure that those who steal from people through their predatory practice or defraud from people who think that they're actually getting a certain product and they're not, that they have access to the Attorney General, not by having them have to come to us, but us coming to them to let them know what we're doing and what we're looking for and gathering those stories. I will also make sure that insurance companies are not price gouging anyone out of necessary medications or necessary life-saving treatments, because insurance companies cannot deny anyone with pre-existing conditions, whether they're physical health or mental wellness. And I will make sure that people know their rights. And I will make sure that people have justice in their housing. Housing stability is a #1 staple, and that improves public safety. Whether people understand it or not, improving the life of people improves their opportunities and reduces crime. I will make sure that people have stability in housing, that they are not price gouged out of the market when they're trying to rent, nor are they discriminated against when they go to find housing in an area where their children can grow and prosper. I want to use this role to be the people's lawyer, and I'm going to take that to the people.
Thank you, Chair. Craig, same question.
Craig, you're muted.
Yep, classic Zoom error, right? Thanks, Jack. Yeah, so most folks don't know that the Office of the Attorney General actually has 4 different roles, and criminal law is just one of them. The Office of Public Engagement has a role to play here, and the Office of Public Protection, which is really about consumer protection, and has within it the Office of Consumer Advocate, against whom and with whom I've advocated in the utility space. The Office of Public Engagement has as one of its core functions educating seniors, particularly about fraud. And in fact, I just hosted one of those forums in my legislative district. I'm trying to teach them about these new online scams. And as I said to this room of seniors, it's like, nobody's talking to you like you're frail. We're getting this training in the workplace, and our children are getting this training in the schools, and you don't otherwise have access to it. So I would think first and foremost is education. But as we told this group of seniors, very closely related to that is reporting. Too often, we are not getting reports from people that are victims of consumer fraud. And it's another one of the things that we would be working on in the Attorney General's office, so that we have an inventory of those people that we need to go after. And then lastly, I sit on the Consumer Protection Committee right now. I'm running legislation dealing with AI and the new schemes that we may be facing with AI, whether it's schemes or incorrect information being put out by the companies. There's legislative work to be done from the purview of the Attorney General's office.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
Yeah, thanks, Diana. So the district attorneys share the same power as the Attorney General under Pennsylvania's consumer protection law to bring action on behalf of the Commonwealth citizens against companies who are defrauding consumers. I've actually done it. I'm the only one of the few district attorneys who's actually used that power. I successfully sued the opioid distributors to bring about $60 million home to Delaware County to help people with substance use disorder. I litigated the case, and Attorney General Shapiro and I joined a settlement that he negotiated. I'm using the same power in the environmental space. My first day as district attorney, I started the first environmental crimes unit in any district attorney's office in Pennsylvania. I partnered with Attorney General Shapiro in the prosecution of Mariner 2. That's the company called Energy Transfer Company that negligently destroyed communities in building the Mariner 2 pipeline. I'm now suing the chemical companies, big chemical companies, using the state's consumer protection statute for the chemicals they put in our bodies, our drinking waters, and in concentrated amounts in firefighting foam. These are the forever chemicals called PFAS you're hearing a lot about. And I want to continue doing that work as Attorney General. As Craig noted, we have a consumer protections office in the Attorney General's office that really want to superpower, use that to get people, particularly seniors, the information they need to protect themselves. We do that as a district attorney's office, but we don't have quite the resources the Attorney General will have. So I'm very much looking forward to being the Consumer Protection Attorney General for everyone in Pennsylvania and all 67 counties.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Jared?
Thank you for the question. You know, this is the part of the Attorney General's office that really gets into quality of life in communities. And I did this work as an antitrust and securities lawyer, taking on the biggest corporate cheats there are out there. And this function really protects our most vulnerable, our seniors, our kids, their families. And I'm going to use my expertise to take on these big corporate cheats straight on. Those PBM manufacturers who are supposed to manage the healthcare prescription drug plans for healthcare companies, streamline the costs, but all they've been doing is jacking up senior costs on prescription drugs time and time again. Those big developers that come out of state don't care about our communities in the Commonwealth and engage in redlining, illegal redlining, in illegal rent to own scams, in illegal surcharges and fees. And of course, the healthcare industry. I dealt with this in my own private practice. The healthcare industry that's engaging in illegal vertical horizontal integration, market allocation to pad their, so that corporations can pad their own pockets. I'm going to take these folks on head on to make sure we're preserving workers' rights and stabilizing wages all across the Commonwealth. These are the actions that really get to the quality of life of all Pennsylvanians. I have the experience to do this, and I look forward to bringing this role to all 67 counties.
All right, thank you, Jared. Joe.
Thanks for the question, Diana. I think one of the best ways to assess our credibility about what we want to do is to look at what we have done. And Diana, you may recall when I came to Bucks County and became county solicitor, I did something no county solicitor had ever done before, which was to make consumer protection and oversight of the Consumer Protection Department the portfolio of the county solicitor. That's the reason that we did all kinds of things in Bucks County that had never been done before. Like when we became the first county in America to sue the big tech companies for targeting our kids, not just in Bucks County, but across the country. And one of the things that we did was before we filed a single lawsuit, before we wrote a single law, was we started asking the questions of what are the problems that we haven't learned about? And one of the things that we started to understand, and this is where I was helped by being a first generation American. I was the first Asian American county solicitor. I'd be the first Asian American attorney general. And it became clear that there were immigrant communities and communities where English was not a first language who weren't able to access our super hotline. And so we went into those communities to find out what was on their mind. We came to understand that many of these folks felt cheated by used car companies. And by listening, used car dealerships, by listening to these folks, we came up with a solution, a bill of rights for used car buyers that doesn't just protect first generation Americans in Bucks County, it protects all Bucks Countyans when they go out into the consumer marketplace. So we'll continue to do the work. In healthcare, we'll take on the insurance companies. In education, we'll take on the lenders. And when it comes to financial crimes, we'll go after the same folks I've gone after before. But we will also make sure that we're showing up for the people that need an AG to be their champion.
Okay, thank you. Eugene?
Yes, the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General is critical. And people that know I'm a huge Star Wars fan may giggle at this, but most Pennsylvanians and a lot of people in the country are dealing with the trash compactor economy, like you had in Star Wars, where these walls are slowly closing in on people. And we have to, as the Attorney General, we have to be their lawyer to fight back. One of those areas where you need to fight back, and Jared brought it up earlier, is prescription drug prices. He's spot on there. As an Auditor General, I investigated those pharmacy benefit managers that were so responsible for jacking up our prescription drug prices. When I was on the Consumer Protection or this Consumer Affairs Committee in the state legislature, I partnered with then State Representative, now Mayor Sherrell Parker. We killed a payday lending bill that would have actually legalized, I believe, stealing from poor people in Pennsylvania. And it's that type of approach, taking on the pharmacy benefit managers. We're looking out for people that don't quite have all the same information to make sure that they're not getting price gouged by some bigger entities, is the type of approach I'll be as Attorney General. Looking out for people that have insurance but want access to all healthcare facilities. You know, in the western part of the state, you had this UPMC Highmark issue that went on for years and years. That consent decree is going to come up in the next term of the next Attorney General. I want to be there to make sure I am holding both entities accountable, both Highmark and UPMC, for access for anyone to get access to those healthcare facilities. Looking out for average everyday folks is the exact approach I'll take as your Attorney General.
All right, thank you, everyone. So now from consumer protection, we're now moving on to elections and voting rights. And Eugene, we're going to stick with you first. So warning, this is a bit of a compound question. So how do you plan to prioritize and safeguard election integrity in Pennsylvania? Specifically, what strategies will you implement to address potential threats to the electoral process, bolster public confidence and transparency of our elections? And would your approach or strategy change if the President of the United States is the same party as yours? Okay.
So it's a great question. Number one, I've already taken steps on this. As Auditor General, I investigated the voter registration system known as SURE. We found close to 40 things that needed to be fixed in that. And both Republicans and Democrats and the Wolf administration took my recommendations and made the voter registration system more secure. My investigation helped make that happen. As Attorney General, my job, if I'm so honored to be the Attorney General, is to make sure that the will of the voters is carried out. That means being proactive and working with county election officials all over the state to make sure that they know what they have to do. And the people that are the inspectors of elections know what they have to do to make sure that these votes are counted accurately. And that everyone that is legally allowed to cast a vote, that does cast that vote, has the right to have that vote counted. That's being proactive. Then on the lawsuit side of it, we have to be proactive in looking how former Attorney General Shapiro did it. Meaning, I think they were masterful how they beat back frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit to make sure that the will of the voters was carried out. And when it comes to whether it's President Biden or former President Trump, look, that's up to the voters. As Auditor General, I got in a lot of trouble for this. Philadelphia Inquirer endorsed me because of this, because I was both tough and fair on Governor Wolf and tough and fair on former Governor Corbett. That's the same type of approach I'll be as Attorney General. I'll look out for the voters and their will, not whatever some politician in Washington wants.
All right, thank you. Joe, same question.
Thanks, Diana. This is going to be the most important test of our next Attorney General, because on day one, make no mistake about it, these challenges, and they will be bogus challenges to the election results if Joe Biden is reelected through the votes of the people of Pennsylvania, as I believe he will be. We have to get this right. And so to answer your question, I will continue the work that I did back in 2020 when I didn't just protect the right to vote here in Bucks County, but I worked with people in your office and across Pennsylvania, uniting these counties in our defense against these bogus challenges. It was an attempt to kill us with 1,000 paper cuts, and we beat them by working together, by being united, by being really, really good. And as difficult as that work was, I'm really, proud that we were successful fighting and winning before the U.S. Supreme Court. But they're going to be better prepared next time. It's not going to be Rudy Giuliani, calling the shots from the parking lot of my old neighborhood at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company, right? They've learned from their mistakes. And we didn't have a single election denier running a county board of elections back in 2020, and now they're everywhere. So we're not only going to need to get it right in court and to uphold our role, our oaths to the Constitution and to defend democracy, but we're going to need to be prepared this time to go to court against governments that refuse to do their job, that refuse to uphold the will of the people. And it doesn't matter, as Eugene said, who wins the election. The role of the Attorney General is to do it fair and square. And that's the reason that in Bucks County, when this was all over, the chairs of the Republican and Democratic parties said publicly that everything was fair and square. We were transparent, we were honest, and there was no fraud, and Joe Biden was fairly elected.
All right, thanks. Here.
Thank you, Diana. So this is going to be, if whoever gets in, which I hope is me, we're going to have a defensive posture at the time that we are able to come into fruition of that office. Because if one party wins, which would be the Democrats, I'm sure we'll be dealing with what we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. And that is bringing cases into court in which the Attorney General has to actively defend. And I will work with every county commissioner and, of course, election commissioner to ensure that if we do have a civil complaint or a criminal complaint, we investigate it well. And I know how to investigate from a defensive posture. Also, I do understand that after we're able to defeat those successfully, because I do believe in the integrity of our election process, I do think that we're going to have to start offense, because we know voter suppression issues happen way before the day of election. So we will have to make sure that people are well informed of their rights. We'll have a resource guide that not only sits on the website of the Attorney General, but actually goes out into the neighborhoods, senior centers, and everywhere to make sure we understand issues with polling place shutdowns, drop box disparities, but also where people are targeting voters, giving them misinformation. And if anyone threatens or harasses anyone that is on the team of working the polls, excuse me, they will be prosecuted to the fullest, because you cannot harass and ruin some lives based on a reckless lie. We will hold politicians to a greater standard.
All right, thank you, Keir. Craig, same question.
Thank you. As the one Republican in the room, I'm guessing that my answer is going to sound a little bit different. But those who have prosecutorial experience, I think, will find this to ring true, which is that as a person in leadership in Pennsylvania, you've got an absolute obligation to investigate. And I think the one thing that we can do to bring calm to our Commonwealth is when an allegation is made, investigate it and then report on it. I've heard some references to the former Attorney General with respect to the last election. And the one thing that I found uniquely unserious about his handling of the election is he went to Twitter to encourage half of the Commonwealth to hate on the other half of the Commonwealth. And I think the next Attorney General has an opportunity to lead in a different way, which is to investigate any accusation that comes to the office on both sides and make the report about those accusations public. And then the other thing that I think the Attorney General can do is work with the General Assembly on voter ID. Again, this is a voting confidence issue. That issue now polls extremely well across both parties. And in fact, in the last legislative session, we passed voter ID. And by the way, the voter ID was not a driver's license. It was a voter registration card that had your identification and a barcode on the back of it. And the last governor vetoed that. I think that is one of those items that would give both sides of the aisle a great deal of confidence in the outcome of elections. But as has already been noted, the Attorney General's office has a significant role to play in defending those cases in court, and I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
Sorry. It's sad that we're even asking this question, right? In 21st century America. My family came here as refugees from the Soviet Union. One of the things that they intended to enjoy here was democracy. And I am not going to let that end on my watch as a first generation American. So let me just say, I've already been proud to stand with Attorney General Shapiro in the 2020 election as we dealt with this issue 4 years ago. There were people who made allegations that the entire national election was stolen in Delaware County because we provided the victory margin for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania. I investigated all those claims. I am a prosecutor. I am the chief law enforcement officer. I did it with no passion. I did it with just following the facts and the evidence. And I found one person who did illegally vote their dead mother for Donald Trump. Whether they voted him for Donald Trump or Joe Biden didn't matter to me. The fact was we caught somebody who violated our election security laws and we held them accountable. I'll do the same as Attorney General. And to answer the second part of your question, you absolutely, as Attorney General, just like as a district attorney, you have to be dispassionate about partisanship. You have to have people trusting your credibility that you will follow the evidence and follow the facts and make a rational decision based on the law. That is the only thing that gets us through as a society. That's what I've done successfully in Delaware County, while I was reelected by Republicans, Democrats, and Independents last year. That's exactly what I'll do as your next Attorney General.
All right. Thank you, Jack. Excuse me. And Jared?
Thank you. Yeah, I watched in 2020 when I sat on the state government committee, when there were all of these allegations about voter improprieties. And witness after witness came in, election officials from ruby red Trump counties in Somerset County and Elk County. And each election official told our committee, there's nothing to see here. We administer the election in a fair, impartial, effective, efficient manner. I think as Attorney General, it's very important that I would do this, to work with the Election Protection Task Force to get out early prior to elections, to go to those counties and allow election officials in counties with Republicans and Democrats to disabuse folks of any myths, any conspiracy theories, to get the truth out there before an election, to take the temperature down. Also, what I would do, besides using that model in the Election Protection Task Force to get out early, is work with the legislature. The best way to combat any allegations of election fraud, possible tinkering with elections, is to expand accessibility. Do what Committee of 70 always is calling for. Let's actually get early voting, same-day voter registration, actual voting early on polling machines. This will create a balance, the right balance, between security and accessibility.
Thank you, Jared. one of you, I think, mentioned this earlier on artificial intelligence. So our last question before our lightning round is focusing on that. We're going to start with you, Joe. What do you consider is the biggest threat or risk arising from artificial intelligence, AI, and what will you do as Attorney General to address it?
I think that's a wonderful question. Thank you, Diana. And the biggest threat we face is that it's developing more rapidly than our legislature and our regulators have the ability to keep up with. And this is why I'm running for this office. It wasn't the House and the Senate holding hands and agreeing on a fair funding formula for the governor to sign. It was smart lawyers working with stakeholders, going to court and putting the public education system on trial. That's how we got fair maps. And that's what we're going to need to do to take on all of the forms that AI presents dangers for people in Pennsylvania. You can go down the list of the threats that AI poses if we don't have guardrails in place, and there's no one better suited to take that on than an attorney general with the vision and leadership to take that on. So what am I talking about? Well, we just talked about election security. We have a crisis of misinformation that is flooding this country right now, and there are folks who want to undermine our democracy by deceiving voters. We are going to need an attorney general who is prepared to use their power to intervene in court, to take on issues like that, to protect workers. AI is moving so quickly that before folks who are protected by collective bargaining agreements have a chance to raise their hands, their jobs could be eliminated. The data privacy of folks who have access to healthcare, the list go on and on. And when I took on the tech companies last year, I was asked on CNN, well, isn't this David versus Goliath? You're just a county solicitor taking on these giant corporations. Well, 40 attorneys general joined me 6 months later because they understood that this was the right direction to go on. And that's the direction I'll take this office in.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Jared, same question.
I think setting up appropriate guardrails is really the issue. And, there are sort of two main buckets where the Attorney General operates. There's the daily grind of the office. And we've been talking a lot about that: consumer protection, criminal justice, insurance fraud, corruption, environmental protection, all the issues that we deal with every day. But then there's the inspirational work. There's the policy setting, tone setting, cultural shifting work. And this would be one of those buckets, dealing with AI. And what a lot of state attorneys do across the country, and we can be doing more of that in Pennsylvania, is using the task force model to drive these changes, to really figure out what are the appropriate guardrails. So what I would do is set up this task force with local law enforcement, local DAs, subject matter experts, to first study the issue, come up with the tools that we currently have to set up appropriate guardrails for AI, hone those tools, and then look to what new policy recommendations we need to work in the legislature to advance a new set of guardrails. And I'm perfectly situated to do that. I've passed bills, most of which I passed in a Republican legislature, now in the majority, still passing legislation, working in a collaborative, coordinated way. But I think when it comes to this work, this is the perfect task force work to do to really bring necessary changes to Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Jared. Jack?
Yeah, thank you. This is a subject, as a father of two 18-year-old children, that really scare me. A couple months before he died, Henry Kissinger said that he thinks the next 5 years are going to be the most dangerous years in our world's history since the run-up to the First World War. And what he particularly talked about, the danger AI presents to us in many different formats, but particularly in the national security area, when you have smart weapons that are going to be able to think while they're being fired at people with nuclear warheads potential. What we're talking about here in Pennsylvania, the misinformation and the kind of things we're going to deal with as a state attorney general, is minor compared to that. But quite honestly, what we need to do is have our legislators actually regulate AI. Stop just dancing with the tech companies, but actually get some legislation passed. The Attorney General, folks, is the chief law enforcement officer. That means to enforce the law. We don't get to make it. So will we have a voice? I would hope so. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to enforce whatever law our lawmakers, who we elect and pay a lot of money to in Pennsylvania, can finally get their act together and put some guardrails in place. Everybody's saying the guardrail, word, but we actually need to pass legislation that we can then go and enforce and protect people. That's what I'll do as Attorney General. I'm not going to pander to anybody. What I'm going to say flat out is I will enforce the law, but we need better laws on the books to deal with this threat.
Thank you, Jack. Kier?
So AI is one of those areas where it's going to take a person that is always been willing to stand up to greater interests on behalf of the little people, because AI has been very exploitive in many communities, where it has distorted facts and truths to keep them disenfranchised from things, or whether it's stolen images to distort people's reality and perception of what is healthy and what is not. And what I mean is, I've seen a lot of young kids in vulnerable communities be connected with AI in a negative way. And we're not willing to reel back some of these tech giants who you have platforms that allow for this to happen. Consequently, we have allowed AI to become so big that we cannot even understand some of its harms and dangerous effects as of right now. But I plan to use this role in all of its tools to seek justice and expose truths, because one of the things we can do is investigate wherever there's smoke, there's fire. There's something going on right now where attorneys generals are suing big tech companies for their preying and their predatory practices. And I want to make sure that young kids are not exposed to the harms and dangers of certain platforms that have endless scrolls or that have other distortions that create real depression and anxiety amongst children. I have 2 children and I've lost to social media. And I understand how AI has come in and really created an understanding or an awareness that we cannot believe what we're seeing sometimes. And that's a big problem. We have to get that back, and I'll be the Attorney General to do it.
Thank you, Kier. Craig, same question.
Thank you. Let me just give you one quick fact pattern of what we're dealing with in the context of artificial intelligence. There is a scheme going on right now where they get a loved one's voice from social media or somewhere online, sometimes of a child, and replicate that voice using AI to then call you and leave a voicemail that says, you know, grandma, grandpa, mom or dad, they have me and I'm in a foreign country or in another part of the world, or I'm sorry, another part of the country, and you need to send money to this account or call this number. That is happening right now using artificial intelligence. And these are the schemes that we're talking about. And Jack's exactly right. It's only going to get much, much worse. It's not enough to say that we will eventually get the laws right. I'm a former cybersecurity lawyer in the energy sector, and we are constantly chasing standards and protocols and legislation because the threat is ever evolving. But what we can do is start to penalize it. And so, for example, I am right now in the midst in the Consumer Protection Committee trying to pass a bill that takes care of people who are making use of AI bots inside of companies to give information out to consumers, that you become strictly liable for any information that you provide to a consumer. Up in Canada, a guy had to take an airline company to court because he detrimentally relied on a bereavement fare that then the company wouldn't honor because it came from AI. And I think we should hold those companies strictly liable for that information.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. And then Eugene?
Thank you. This is an issue I have to deal with on a much smaller scale as a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, that we have to be worried about AI writing papers for kids. And obviously that's at a much smaller scale as opposed to wiping out whole sections of the economy and using AI as a means of stealing from people. And so as Attorney General, we've got to be looking out for average everyday consumers. And I think it's been stressed here before, we enforce the law, we don't make the law. The law is clearly in both in Harrisburg and in DC have to be enhanced to give prosecutors the tools to do this. One of the things we also need to do as Attorney General is build partnerships. Look, when I investigated and found over 3,000 untested rape kits, a very similar situation happened in the state of Kentucky with a Republican state auditor. So what did he and I do? We both went to the National Auditors Conference and we outlined ways so that all over the country, we can use the information we learned so that we could crack down on untested rape kits all over the country. We need to take a similar approach when it comes to taking on AI abuses. Look, we need to have partnerships with other state attorneys general. This certainly needs to be bipartisan. We need to cooperate across state lines because this is not something that happens just inside of Pennsylvania. So what needs to happen? Advocate for enhanced tools, both in Harrisburg and DC, hold these actors accountable, hold them accountable to the fullest extent of the law, and do everything we can to educate the people of Pennsylvania and the country of the dangers out there and how they can protect themselves.
All right, thank you, Eugene, and thank you, everyone. So we're moving on to what's been called our lightning round. And so in this lightning round, I'm going to read a statement, and each of you will have 5 to 10 seconds to reveal whether you think the statement, whether you agree or disagree with the statement. And so you can use your hand gesture, your actual hand gestures, thumbs up for you agree and thumbs down for you disagree, or you can use the ones available on your Zoom, just to make sure that your reaction is visible for everybody. After you do that, I'm going to call on 1 or 2 afterwards to expand upon that for about 20 seconds. Okay, everyone ready? Okay, so first statement. As Attorney General, I will continue to protect reproductive rights, the right to abortion, and access to FDA-approved medication such as mifepristone. Got a double hands up from Kier. All right. Now, Craig, you didn't give us any, so you know we're going to have to ask you about that. So let's start. 20 seconds. Tell us first of all, what does this mean? And
That means that
us.
It's a gray area and it doesn't avail itself to a binary answer, which is to say that as the Attorney General, I'm going to enforce the Abortion Control Act. And the good news for Pennsylvania right now is with the split General Assembly, there's no chance the Abortion Control Act is going to be rolled back. The Attorney General and the district attorneys have a role in the criminal provisions of the Abortion Control Act, and I will enforce that law.
Okay, thank you. And Kier, you know, you're going to get called on because you did too. So give us your reaction to that.
I will 100% unapologetically protect a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. So I will not prosecute anyone at any time for exercising their right for abortion, but I will also make sure that people have access to prenatal care and healthy options for their healthy delivery, should they choose to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Our next statement. The people of Pennsylvania have a right to clean air, pure water, and the preservation of our environment. And as Attorney General, I will protect these state constitutional rights more than any prior Attorney General. All right, unanimous across the board. All right, Joe, I'm thinking you were copying Kier a little bit, but explain to us 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I was the only county solicitor to ever enforce that right, which he did twice here in Bucks County. And I think that the Attorney General's office, which is doing great prosecuting environmental crimes, has to rethink how we do this. We need to think about environmental justice. The Environmental Rights Amendment in Pennsylvania, it's a superpower with an AG with the vision and the experience to use it to not only prosecute criminals, but to go after government itself when it lets the people down, because that amendment requires government to protect that right for all Pennsylvanians.
Okay. Eugene, you were also a thumbs up. Oh, that was unanimous across the board.
Yeah, I think we all did, but yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but this is my time to go for the 20 seconds. Yes.
Yes.
So the short answer is 100%. It's a state constitutional right. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not up for debate whether we should have clean air or clean water. We have to have both. And I've already taken on this issue. When I was Auditor General, I investigated all the Marcellus Shale drillers, found out what they were doing to our drinking water, held the corporate administration accountable, forced them to hire new inspectors, which made sure our drinking water was better protected. It's that same type of leadership I'll bring as Attorney General.
Thank you. Okay. Next statement. DEI and ESG initiatives and programs are illegal. And as Attorney General, I will investigate and prosecute entities that implement such initiatives and programs. Jack, do you need me to read it again?
Did you say it's illegal?
That's what the statement said. That's not what I said. I said the statement said DEI and ESG.
I don't think we agree that that's true, but
Yeah.
assuming it's true.
Okay. Well, that's also telling. So it seems like everyone's a thumbs down on that. Okay.
If it were true, yeah.
So Jack, you want to start us off? You're on mute.
Not particularly, because I don't understand the question. You're saying that DEI programs are illegal in Pennsylvania? Then you better tell that to Delaware County, because we have one.
No, I'm saying that that's a statement that some may say are illegal. Some are saying, some attorney generals, as I'm sure you know, not in Pennsylvania, but in other parts of the country, are saying that DEI and ESG initiatives are illegal and are starting different actions against those. So it's based off of that premise. So if you think that's not true, then you can expand upon that for the 20 seconds.
I think that's not true.
Okay, 2 seconds, a man who's concise, that's good. Okay, so anyone else? Craig, do you want to expand a little bit on that?
No, I'm as puzzled as Jack about this. I'm not aware of it being illegal. I think the question is trying to get to some of the other states where they have challenged some of the things being taught in schools, and I think that's a matter of states' rights. But again, I'm not aware of any state that's made DEI programs illegal, and in fact, most of the times the corporations are doing that as a matter of business policy.
Okay.
Did I?
Joe, go
Can I
ahead.
jump in?
Yeah, I mean,
Go work here.
Thank you.
I don't want to step on your toes
I'll let
here.
Joe go and then I'll go.
Yeah, I mean, look, and this isn't pick on the Republican time, but I just have to disagree with Craig's premise, because there are Republicans across the country that have asserted this view, and we dealt with this in Bucks County. One of the things that we did to kind of punch above our weight was to join amicus briefing when these kinds of programs came under attack, and we were dealing with fights like this when Donald Trump was president from 2017 to 2021. And so I think it's clear that the Attorney General is clear about what the law provides and who the law protects.
Okay,
May I?
and then Kier?
Yeah, so this has started bubbling up after the affirmative action ruling, where the courts deemed affirmative action to be illegal. And so attorneys generals, especially Republican attorneys generals, have written Fortune 100 companies really threatening them against their DEI practices. And the other Democratic attorneys generals has banded together to work with businesses who have robust DEI practices to make sure that they are within the bounds of every law. And I will join them.
Okay, thank you. So we will next start off with something I hope is a little less controversial, and I think can bring everybody back on the same page, although we were on the same page before too. So PA's next Attorney General needs to focus more resources on protecting seniors and elderly residents from consumer protection fraud. Okay, unanimous across the board. Jared, why don't you share with us?
Yeah, I better, because my mom will be very upset with me if I don't. Our seniors sometimes are very undervalued, and they suffer from schemes and scams all the time. Facebook scams, the utility worker that jacks their rates up. So we need to do a much better job investing in communities and taking care of our seniors.
She may be a little upset that you put her in that category, but it's okay. Who else do we have? Eugene, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, sure. Look, this is absolutely critical. We all see these emails and text messaging, these scams every day. I will throw my mom under the bus as well as Jared throwing his mom under the bus. My mom certainly gets this stuff in her email all the time. And it's not just about looking out for our moms, it's looking out for all seniors who are trying to get scammed every single day. These people crooks, we have to hold them accountable, both whether it be incarceration or particularly financially.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next question. If elected Attorney General, I will appoint a special prosecutor for crimes on and near SEPTA property in order to enhance public safety in Philadelphia as required by Act 40. All right. This is the whole spectrum. Okay. So I think Craig, you had a thumbs up, and Kier, you had this. So Craig first, and then Kier, and Eugene too. So we're gonna get the two, whatever this is.
Right.
And then Craig, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So I did vote for Act 40, and I would encourage its use, although it's not being used right now. There is absolutely a state role in prosecuting crimes that are happening on SEPTA, considering it is state property. And given that the district attorney seems unwilling to do that, I don't see any problem with bringing more resources to bear rather than fewer.
Thank you. Eugene, you were one of those, and then here, you're next.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been clear. I'm not happy with how Act 40 happened. I think there's better approaches there, but I've also been clear. Public safety on SEPTA is critical. And so I'll work with the district attorney and the resources that law gives to make sure that people are better protected on SEPTA. Just because I'm not happy with how the law passed, and I think there's a better approach to it. I think there's a way to use those resources and partner with the district attorney to make sure people are better protected on SEPTA.
Thank you. Here.
Yeah, I know that right now the case is in court. And so it's really being challenged as to its legality. And that has not been fully, totally decided whether or not it's legal. So that's what and that's of course, the meticulous lawyer in me. So when you say it's in accordance with the law, right now it's still in this weird space. I get that the governor signed it into law, but I do respect the fact that there's still a battle to be won or to be lost. Who knows?
Okay, thank you.
To be fair,
And-
can I speak too?
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, SEPTA is vital to the economic health of our entire region. We have to keep it safe or there won't be ridership anymore. My dad was a SEPTA bus driver, spent most of my life on SEPTA. We need to keep it intact. The legislation that was passed on a bipartisan vote, and it includes giving that special prosecutor the authority to take cases in my county as well. I think we need to use every tool in the toolbox to save SEPTA.
Okay. And since we're almost done, we might as well also hear from Joe and Jared on this as well. So Joe, I think you were a thumbs down.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes me furious as somebody who grew up riding SEPTA to school and has a family still in Philadelphia, seeing the tragedies we see unfolding on public transit being used as political theater. In my view, Act 40 is a stunt. Some of the same people who are behind this are the same people that refuse to allow Philadelphia to pass common sense gun laws to address the public safety crisis. They're the same folks who refuse to provide SEPTA the resources it needs to have more police officers to provide real safety. And I don't want to go too much over time, but there's a lot of reasons why the current AG hasn't used this tool and is not putting it in place.
Okay. And Jared?
I've been clear for years now that our DA has to do better. He's failing our city. But this constant Republican bombardment on trying to deny voters and the voices of our city their ability to elect officials, it just doesn't fly. Act 40 was another attempt to do just that. It doesn't work, and we need to deny those efforts.
All right, thank you.
I'd like
Jared.
to respond to the attack on the Republicans because,
Well,
again,
I'm sorry, Greg, you can't. The rules were if you were addressed specifically and you spoke already, so.
I'm the only Republican here.
Well, no, we're gonna move on.
Okay.
So the last one. And
Democrat governor signed it.
If you want to address some of that in your closing, which you will have time to do, you can do that too. So we're moving on to the last statement is protecting military personnel, veterans, and their families needs to be more of a priority of the Attorney General's consumer protection efforts. Yeah, that one I thought would be a nice way to end this particular round. Craig, do you want to start off on that one?
Yeah, thank you. And again, as a retired Marine Corps colonel, this is something that hits near and dear to my heart. I think that it's lost for most people that haven't served overseas in a combat zone, that when these warriors are coming home, they're never the same. Their home looks like their battlefield in the sense that they spent most of their battle in a vehicle, and home is very much like that. So we've got to be doing more with mental health, more with addiction, and more with fraud against our military families.
All right, thank you. I think we have time for one more reaction.
May I offer slightly different perspective of someone that's not necessarily had worked in the battlefield, but had family members that came home and could not access services? Because I do think accessibility to services for all communities is a problem. While we have certain services that are given and targeted to veterans, some people are not getting access to those things. And if they don't have a family that can take care of all of their needs, they really do end up in a very, very desperate and vulnerable state. And I represented them on that end.
All right, thank you, Kier. I think we have time for one more before closing arguments. Anyone want the last reaction? Eugene?
Yes, look, I saw firsthand what happened to my dad. When you get bad medical advice and bad medical treatment. I mean, look, obviously they were critical in saving him from the wounds, but this is happening to way too many veterans all over our country. It's why, I talked about earlier, the 2/3 of all deaths by firearm in Pennsylvania are by suicide. Well, so many of them are veterans. That means they're not getting the services of mental health help they need. As Attorney General, I'll fight for them every single day.
All right, thank you, Eugene, and thank you all. We've now arrived to the last part of our forum discussion, which are closing statements. So Jared, I think you're the last one who hasn't been able to start a particular round of questions. So we're going to start with you. In your closing statements of 90 seconds, if you could tell us, why should Pennsylvania residents vote for you, and how would your administration be different and better than that of your predecessors?
Thank you. Well, I want to focus this on the Committee of 70 because that's the forum we're in. And Diana, thank you so much. Committee of 70 has been the watchdog, bringing together good government reform groups, accountability measures for the city of Philadelphia, being the rallying cry for a better, cleaner, more accountable government. That is who I am. That has been my voice in the city of Philadelphia and throughout the Commonwealth, taking on the biggest power brokers and elites, special interests, everyone in between. In the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, a core responsibility for the Attorney General is taking on corruption, pushing forward on the mission of Committee of 70, because we do not get our best democracy, our most robust, vibrant democracy where citizens are uplifted if we do not uplift the public trust. And at every moment as your next Attorney General, I'm going to be laser focused on making sure I hold all politicians, all special interests accountable to us here in Pennsylvania. So the public trust is a real thing. Our democracy is returned to a place of honor, and that all people respected throughout our whole Commonwealth.
All right, thank you, Jared. We have Craig, you are up.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you for this forum. I also want to thank my Democrat colleagues here for allowing me into this format. This is the second time we've all been together, and it's always collegial. It's always very, very thoughtful debate. I wish my opponent would see things that way. Duck Dave is the guy who won't appear in any forums, I guess because these issues are too hard, or perhaps they're too much about Philadelphia, where people are genuinely suffering. As I've said before, I've been serving my country, my community, and now my legislative district my entire life. I am a former federal prosecutor. I'm a Marine Corps combat veteran. I'm a former energy attorney, and I'm a former counsel to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I have uniquely situated qualifications. I have the diversity of qualifications to do this job. I am willing to go into tough formats like this one and have the conversation. I see my friend Jack right now is smiling because we do have a friendship. I have a friendship with Jared Solomon and Joe Kahn, with whom I've worked before, because that's what it takes to govern, is to be a decent human being with open ears and an open mind, which is what I do both in the House of Representatives and my entire career. I'm asking you for your vote because we live in a dangerous world right now. It's time to send in a Marine. I'll make you proud, and I'll keep you safe. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Craig. Jack?
Yeah, thank you, Diana, and thank you to the Committee of 70 and for all the organizations involved in putting this together tonight. Thank you to my colleagues, and thank you for all the service all of you do. Again, my name is Jack Stolzheimer. I'm the District Attorney of Delaware County. I think that experience uniquely qualifies me to be the next Attorney General of Pennsylvania. Let me just tell you a moment about who I am. I'm a lifelong Democrat and a longtime public servant because I was inspired by my family's struggles to live the American dream. As I mentioned, my mother came to this country as a 15-year-old Ukrainian refugee from a Nazi slave labor camp. She and her family first lived as free people in the city of Chester back in 1951. My dad was a high school dropped out of high school to join the Army during the Korean War, served his country. My mother and father, for a brief period of time, got to live the American dream until she died at 26 in childbirth with me. The reason my family stayed out of poverty because of the Social Security program, the death benefits my mother had earned. But my dad got us into the middle class when he got a union job. And that's why I've been a Democrat and a public servant for most of my entire life, because I want to make a difference. I believe government can and should make a difference in the lives of all of its people. It's done that for me. It's done it for my family. I've done that as District Attorney of Delaware County. I am ready to be the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and to fight every single day like I have in Delaware County, to protect consumers, to stand up for the union way of life, and to stop the gun violence. My name is Jack Stolzheimer. I would deeply appreciate your support for Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Jack. Eugene?
Yes, thank you to the Committee of 70. I certainly enjoyed working with you when I was a legislator. Some of my legislation about pushing for early voting, in-person voting, that was something I did back in 2008, cooperated with the Committee of 70. And hopefully, if I'm the Attorney General, I'll get to cooperate with you more on protecting our democracy. I certainly want to thank all my colleagues that certainly had the courage to show up. On the Democratic side, I want to say that we've all gotten to know each other over these last several months that we've traveled this state. We're now down to, incredibly enough, about a week to go before the voters get to pick which one of us gets to go on to face the Republican nominee. But I've developed a real friendship with so many of them and rekindled friendship with others. And so the respect I have for all of them is immense. And Craig, I'd say this not to get you the extra 30 seconds, but thanks for having the guts to show up. This is how we get better. All of us. I know I am better because I have been pushed by my colleagues in a good way, and I'd like to think that I've made them better. What you should know from me tonight is I'm someone that knows struggle. I know what it's like to put in hard work, but I also know what it's like to be fair and to seek justice. That's why the Philadelphia Inquirer endorsed me. Now, you should look at that endorsement, and I know it's on our website, dpasquale4ag.com. Why dpasquale? Because, hey, that's my last name. Can't control the spelling of that. But it says right there very clearly, I'll take on anyone that screws up, anyone. That's exactly what I'll do if you elect me Attorney General. Thank you for this forum tonight.
Thank you, Eugene. Here?
Yes, so thank you so much for this thoughtful conversation, and thank you to everyone. And since we're taking jabs, Dave Sunday sits under me on a subcommittee I lead across the state, and he doesn't show up there either, so no worries. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that people know that I am running to be the people's lawyer, because I do believe we need a leader and a lawyer with the creativity and the courage to use that role and all of its tools and resources to meet the challenges of today. You need a person that understands it from many different perspectives, and the one that's going to use that resource and make sure that we target public safety exactly where it needs to be, so that we're really getting our best shot at using all levers of government to reduce gun violence and improve the quality of people's lives. One of the things that I do know is that some people can do everything right and still be relegated to second-class citizenship. I want to make sure everyone has access to services, whether it's healthcare, education, financial opportunities, housing, and a balanced justice systems that make sure that justice is fair and final, and I will not scapegoat anyone into this system for political expediency. I have the credibility and the ability to work across the aisle with law enforcement and others and Republicans, because as I was the first in many offices that I've led, it was a tough environment, and it's been a tough legal environment for someone like me, but I'm still here, and I'm here with everyone else saying that I am capable, able, and qualified to run for the office of Attorney General, and I'll use everything I got to do the best job I can.
Thank you, Kier. And last but not least, Joe.
Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful conversation. It's been great to talk about the opportunities that I think the next Attorney General has to continue the work that I've been doing for 24 years on crime, corruption, and attacks on our rights. I am also excited about the work that's never been done before, having an Attorney General who's ready to take on the housing crisis that impacts every community of Pennsylvania, rethinking environmental crimes and thinking about environmental justice. But before we get to do that work, we have to win. And this is a political competition. I'm proud to run as a lifelong Democrat. And I've been building a coalition across the Pennsylvania that is unique and unlike any other. We have nearly 100 endorsements from organizations and individuals from every possible background. And that's in part because I'm the son of a Pakistani bridge builder who came to this country at a time that there was no president calling for a ban on all Muslims, who fell in love with a Catholic girl from West Oak Lane. And when they got together and it was a Muslim and a Catholic wanting to start a family, they figured a Jewish neighborhood made the most sense, which is how I ended up in Northeast Philly. And when I went up to the University of Chicago to get my law degree, I was fortunate to meet a young professor with the same background, Muslim immigrant dad, Christian American mom, a lifetime of always feeling different, who helped me understand that having to build a bridge in every conversation you have in your whole life wasn't going to hold me back as a public interest lawyer. That was going to be my superpower. My professor's name was Barack Obama, and he went on to build a coalition in the Democratic Party that has really sustained this party and has sustained our country, and we need to keep it together. And that's part of what I've been doing, running across the state. It's what I'll do as the Democratic Party's nominee, and it's what I'll do as our next Attorney General. Thanks again.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all of our candidates tonight for a great discussion. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. So thank you again to all of our esteemed candidates and all of you listening out there. So it has been a great honor and pleasure. And now I'll turn it over to Jennifer Coatsworth, our esteemed Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association. Take it away, Jennifer.
Hi, Diana. Thanks, everyone. As Diana mentioned, I'm Jen Coatsworth, the Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association for 2024, one of tonight's co-sponsors of the forum. I've been given the opportunity to close out tonight's event, and I want to express our gratitude to all of the participants, both the candidates and audience members alike, for engaging in this important discussion about the future of Pennsylvania's legal landscape. The insights that were shared here tonight will undoubtedly help voters make informed decisions as they head to the polls for the primary on Tuesday, April 23rd. Remember that the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I also want to express my appreciation to our esteemed panel moderator, Diana Cortez, for expertly guiding us through tonight's conversation. Your wealth of experience and dedication to justice have been invaluable to this forum. Lastly, thanks to all of our co-sponsors, the Committee of 70, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, the Forum of Executive Women, the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and the Philadelphia Bar Association. Thank you for everything you do to inform voters and ensure that our elections are free, fair, safe, and secure. It's through these collaborative efforts that we can affect positive change in our communities. Thank you once again for your participation and support, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
See ya.
Night,
See ya, Jane.
everyone.